Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When it comes to home and auto insurance, it's important to have the right coverage from a company and an agent you can trust. Someone who will help you properly protect the people and things you love most. So if the unexpected happens, you and your family can rest insured. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Hey Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. We are months into this podcast. It's getting really exciting. Doing all kinds of awesome guests. So excited for today.
Yeah, I think this one, has he been here before?
Yes, this is our second time guest. Is that how we would say that?
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah. We're getting good at this. See, I feel like we've made it now. We've had a guy come back. Didn't have to give the whole bio.
And we didn't have to talk him into it. Like he thought it went so well that he decided to come
and
back.
Then plugged us at the end. So you have to make it to the end, listeners, so you can hear our plug. No, I'm very excited. Taylor's fabulous. And I think we learned a lot, as always.
Yep. So I learned a lot every time he comes in and speaks. You interact with this in my role as a videographer, but just to get that deep dive and kind of learn a little more, get a little deeper into this discussion of the economy of agriculture. It's a neat chat. So I think folks are going to like it a lot.
Yeah. So without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. All right. How's it going, everybody?
It's going well. It's Friday. We're recording a couple podcasts today, and we have an amazing guest today. The smartest guy at Farm Bureau is here again. He's been on the podcast already once, and he's back. So we appreciate him coming to the podcast room today. So how you been?
Been good. Farm Bureau continues to shock me each and every day with the kind words. No, I'm excited to be back on. It's been a little bit, but the podcast has seemed to be going really well. I've heard some great things, and I know you've all had some great guests, so seems exciting. It's picking up, I think.
Yes, I think so. It's been such an adventure and really pretty fun. Getting to meet a lot of people. A lot of these folks I know to some level, but to get to know them a little deeper has been really neat. So, yeah.
I'll be honest. I thought we would have you on sooner. I don't know. Everybody has been so willing to come up here and do these podcasts. I don't know what I expected, but I said, oh, man, we're going to have to fill some gaps with my guys for sure. And then we kind of had to make sure we got Taylor in this month because I was like, hey, we got to say no to some of these and we got to get some updates. So,
and that's how you want it, right?
It's a great problem.
Yeah, that's a great problem to have where you've got folks that listen to it and are familiar with it and they want to be on. Like that's what, I mean, from the Farm Bureau perspective, that's exactly what you want. At least I would think so.
Oh, yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, so I hope you've been traveling a lot since the first time we recorded. Gosh, I think you and Donovan were just in Wayne County not that long ago with a big group. So,
right.
But for those that you are new, go ahead and give a quick overview, kind of where you're from and then what you do here.
Yeah, so Taylor Thompson, work as the commodity marketing specialist here with Farm Bureau. In October, it'll be a year since I've been on staff with the Federation. So some of the specific groups that I cover for Farm Bureau are our grain growers, our forestry folks, as well as our tobacco growers from the policy side of things. And then just kind of generally as I've been working with the Federation, trying to support the commodities division in whatever capacity that looks like and really just trying to get plugged in and learn our operations, right? How do we work from a policy standpoint? How can we look to improve things in the commodities division? A number of things, just trying to find my fit here and also too, how we as a federation work in the state, right? With whether it be our commodity groups or our membership, whoever that might be. Yeah, it's just trying to find that fit early on, and it's been a tremendous learning experience. My wife and I have been incredibly blessed to be a part of Farm Bureau here in Kentucky. So it's been really good.
Very cool. You've been traveling the state a little bit. We had an interesting spring. Harvest is on. It's good. It's happening all over the state. What are you seeing out there? What have you noticed in your travels? How's all that going? And what have you been seeing?
It's a great question. It's a very busy time. A lot of travel here lately. A lot of travel, especially in the summertime. You try to get out and visit with organizations, with individuals as much as possible, especially from the crop side while the crop's in the ground. And now it's that time where things really start to pick up, right? And really, the talking point that I've probably heard more than anything else at the time of this recording has been a lot of the dryness that's picked up in the western part of the state. Has been one of probably the primary matter. And so talking with folks about this, one of the indicators that's kind of used on an industry-wide level that a lot of folks probably listening to this are very familiar with is the U.S. Drought Monitor. And so we got a new report that came out at the time that we're recording right now. It was yesterday, so it was Thursday, and yeah, really saw some drought conditions. I guess will be considered moderate drought type conditions show up in the western part of the state. Okay, so especially as folks are looking right now to make the decision, when exactly do I get out in the field? When do I begin that harvest process? When there's no rains, in the forecast and what's coming in kind of the coming week, 2 weeks or so, and you got some really dry conditions, that's going to put some people in a position to say, hey, maybe now's the time to get out there. Folks having to wrestle with, what damage might there be to the crop if I don't get those August rains that maybe I was looking, especially when we come off the back of early in August, the USDA NASS crop production numbers that came out look like a really strong crop. But I think one of the underlying when that report came out, and prices certainly reacted, right? We've seen some sharp declines in corn and soybean prices, but there was kind of an assumption, right, that when August comes around, we're going to get that rain, right? We're going to get that 1 or 2 rains. It's just going to really make that crop, and that really hadn't shown up. Instead, we've seen in this past week, especially, we've seen some heat, but we've seen just really dry conditions, and so that's been top of mind concern for our producers, and not only in the western portion is what I'm focusing on, but we've really seen some drought early in the season. It really showed up in the central to eastern portions, and we've only seen that really continue in a lot of areas. In that northern Kentucky area, Ohio, just to the north of us, has been extremely dry. So that's top of mind for our growers right now. On top of when do we get in the field, right? Mm-hmm. When do we get this crop out of the ground?
Well, speaking about getting in the field, I've been talking to so many guys over the last month, and I'll be the first to admit, although I do try on the crop side, I feel like I live and eat, sleep, and breathe livestock. And so those are the guys I'm around a lot. And it was so funny in the last 2 weeks how many guys are like, I thought they'd be harvesting like full throttle already out west. I don't understand. Why are they not cranking it out? And I think a lot of us, it's what's right in front of you. All we're thinking about is dry. But that wet spring, that really put some delays on us. And I don't think a lot of us that don't eat, sleep, and breathe grain, I don't think a lot of us remembered how delayed planting was. So kind of help people understand, as you've traveled the state, you had your grain crops meeting already, and we scheduled that to be right before harvest, and it's ended up being almost a month before for some of these guys. So kind of explain to us, how did that wet spring affect the state when it comes to what's already in the ground and what stage we're in, ready to harvest or not?
Yeah, in particular, I like to focus. That's a great question, Renee. And let's look at it really from the corn perspective. For instance, I think one of the things to focus on is kind of this contrast that we had early in the growing season, okay, where we had folks that were actually able to get some of that corn planted early before a lot of that rain came through. And on the back end of, when the summertime was coming around, for the folks that had some of that early corn in before the rains came, I mean, it looks like a really strong crop. I absolutely think that early planted corn is likely going to come out pretty strong come harvest time. And then we had rains, and we had folks that just couldn't get the crop in the ground, had to plant a little bit later. Okay, so we have that crop that, didn't capture some of those early rains. Folks were fighting to get it in the ground. And so now there's a situation where maybe that crop doesn't look as strong. Not to say that it's not going to be strong, and especially when we think about the USDA's numbers in the state of Kentucky, we're actually on par with where we're at last year. Had really good yields last year. We're on par with that. But I think one thing that we've seen, especially the price action in corn and soybeans is a little bit different today, but earlier on this week, I think markets have been wrestling with that, trying to digest that. Yeah, we thought late July, into August, and I think I said August a little bit earlier. I mean, and into August really here and into September, not getting some of those rains. But yeah, it's folks wrestling with, I got a later crop in the ground. I've gotten some rains, but here on the back end of it, when we're really, really on that important time of the growing season, right? I'm not seeing that. So it's been, at least here in the state of Kentucky, that's kind of been the dynamic that's played out. Early crops that were able to capture some of those early rains, especially in corn, that crop's looking strong. I think we're going to see a lot here in the next few weeks in terms of what plays out for our overall yield in the state. Right? Do we, from the corn perspective, do we reach the 187 bushels per acre like we did last year? Right? Are we a little bit over? I think some of the sentiment might be we come in a little bit under, but only time will tell.
Yeah. You brought up Ohio. Like, how's it looking outside of Kentucky? Is this a issue all over? I mean, is this something that's a bigger problem than just in Kentucky?
Yeah, we've really seen that as of late. Is that this heat and this dryness has picked up as of late, really throughout the growing season, especially in the Corn Belt, Midwest. I mean, we've seen some tremendous conditions, some tremendous moisture in areas like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. Probably saw a little too much rain in parts of Minnesota there early on, but I've seen really good moisture throughout the growing season. But now we have seen that those drought conditions pick up, right? And at least dryness in a lot of areas has really picked up. Now Ohio stands out uniquely because they have seen some pretty intense drought conditions. So Ohio, we're going to set them kind of in a bucket by themselves. And which even in our northern Kentucky areas, right, some real dry conditions we've seen too. But overall, the dryness has picked up in the Midwest, and I think prices have wrestled with that in the last few weeks. We've actually seen a bounce above $4 on Dees corn, and a bounce above $10 on November beans. So I mean that's a welcome sight, compared to the 3 handle and the 9 handle that we saw there for a bit, and so there's some stir in the markets. Certainly, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. That it seemed if we'd probably had a conversation 3 weeks or a month ago, it might signed, sealed, delivered. It's going to be an amazing crop, and prices are going to be kind of slower, lower. But we've actually seen as the situation has developed, things look a little bit different.
For our non-farm listeners, what's a good price? What is when you talk about a yield price? Some of this stuff may go over. Even some of our farmers had on what's a good price for corn on a regular basis and historically, and then kind of where are we in relation to that?
That's a wonderful question as well. To put it simply, a great price is when you sell it for higher than what you put it in the ground at.
Right.
Yeah.
What a safe answer. Every farmer's like, no, of course you did.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, of course, you'd love to see $5 corn, this time of year. Some of the numbers that we had saw, it just wasn't too long ago that's the price we were seeing. $12, $13 beans is something that I think is on a lot of folks' mind. But the difficulty today, and this has been another point, talking with a lot of producers out there, some of the input costs that they've seen, it's been really difficult. It's been really difficult in terms of getting that crop crop in the ground at a certain price, your input costs being a certain level, and then having those prices that you're going to have to sell at continually fall lower. Mm-hmm. So I think something for folks that aren't on the farm to kind of realize is simply that, there's two sides of it, right? There's a side in which, we have to purchase this product, put in the ground, and we need things like fertilizer, right? We need things like fuel, mm-hmm. diesel, right? To be able to make sure that we can get this product into the ground. But through the months that it takes for that crop to mature and be ready for harvest, those prices change on the back end. Okay, those prices move. It's not I put it in here, and then I know come September, right, that I'm going to get this. And that's a difficulty with the profession. There's so much volatility. There's so much uncertainty that are in markets, and you see it in times like today. For a lot of folks, it's a difficult time for sure. It's tough.
One thing I always, from back in my cotton selling days, when I was down in Mississippi, the guys would always say, the wrong time for wet weather will cost me more money and make my break even change more than anything else a lot of times. And so you'll get really wet, kind of that muggy, humid weather at the wrong stage for corn, and we've got multiple fungicide applications. You get wet weather that washes away a herbicide application, and you've got weeds pop up again, and you're going over the crop a second time, a third time. You're having to do multiple modes of action in that same tank, and so guys used to tell me weather. We talk about weather a lot, it seems like, especially this time of the year, on how it's affecting prices in general and trends. But it in the season itself, guys can have what they think their cost for that crop's going to be. But you got to add one more herbicide application, or you've got to do another app of fungicide. And depending on what that product costs that year, what the supply is at your retailers, I mean, that'll change pretty quick. So I 100% agree with Taylor's point. We laugh because a lot of farmers say, the old $4 corn, $10 beans, they go, I can't make money on $4 corn. And we laugh because we know everybody's is different. But he makes a very good point. Land prices, what's your rent, what's your equipment? There's so many factors. It is really hard to say what is one guy's break even is definitely not another's.
And this is a point I like to call out off the back of kind of what Renee was talking about. I think especially, this is for farmers and those who don't farm alike. But when we say things like dryness or rains, okay, dryness and heat is not good or bad. The timeliness of dryness and heat is what we talk about. It's the same thing with rain. We talked about earlier in the spring. All right, as producers, we love rain. All right, we want our pastures to look good, and we want our crop to grow. But if it's raining and I can't get my planter in the field, right? Or if I can't get
the point, yeah.
That's exactly. Right. So when we talk about these things, I think for listeners out there, that's one thing to keep in mind is that any time that these topics like heat or drought or rains or moisture come up, those things aren't good or bad. The timeliness of them is what we're oftentimes referring to. What time are we at in the season? Okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Those are the things that matter. So the timeliness of these things that we talk about, and the uniqueness of, for instance, when we're filming, this podcast, right? And when we talk about things like heat and drought, like it's very much a timely matter is why we're bringing this to the forefront.
Yep.
So Taylor, every time we get you in here, we always we talk micro, what's in the state, what's on the farm, what's here on the land I can see right in front of me. But we also, and you've challenged us to do this more often, and I think it's incredible, go macro. Let's look bigger, at a minimum nationwide, region-wide, and then he challenges us a lot, Matt, to go even global. Okay, how are these markets? How are different trade agreements? How are different reports that we may not think relate to agriculture? How are they going to affect prices in the next 2 months, 6 months, year? So talk to us from a brain that works like yours. What's coming up that we want to be looking at? What are you seeing in the future that's going to be reported on that farmers may not think they need to pay attention to, but might affect what's going on in the world of ag?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly no secret, I think, from the groups and the individuals that I've spoken with, I do tend to have a heavier macroeconomic focus than others. And I'll be transparent from me. I think it is just so incredibly important for people in general to have some working understanding of our U.S. economy and our U.S. economy's most influential group, which is the Federal Reserve. Okay, and so why I'm bringing that up right now is to answer Renee's question. We've got some interest rate decisions that are coming up. Okay, and I think by the time that this airs, there will be a decision that has been made. And so kind of where we're sitting at right now, it's looking like on September 18th is when we're going to have our Fed decision for interest rates. Okay, now these interest rates, to put it simply, impact so many aspects of our lives. Whether it doesn't matter what any of us do for a profession, these interest rates are things that are going to impact us. Okay, buying a home, borrowing money, right? Borrowing money to buy equipment, borrowing money to buy land, whatever you name it. Okay, these interest rates are very important because, to put it simply as well, the reason they are so important. Now, I kind of want to dig into this point right here is because at the core, what interest rates do, and from the Fed perspective, right, is they act to combat inflation. Now, I think if any of our listeners and all three of us here, we are no fans of high inflation, right? We go to the grocery store. We don't, if I go buy my box of cereal and it's, $3, and then I go 6 months later and it's, $4.55, right? We don't like these types of things. We like kind of that slow growth over time. Well, it's been no secret that we've experienced some really high inflation in the last few years. Okay, and so the way that the Federal Reserve combats that is through interest rates. All right, so now we were at the point in the cycle, and it came off of some of what Fed Chair Powell spoke of a little while back in Jackson Hole. But it's time for an adjustment, right, that the Federal Reserve sees. Okay, inflation's trending lower to that 2% target that they've identified. All right, we're trending correctly. Got some numbers out today. The unemployment rate's been picking up a little bit. We're a little bit lower than we were. All right, right now we're sitting at 4.2%. And so it's time. It's time for the Fed to say, hey, let's move these interest rates down, okay, and let's start borrowing money. All right, let's make it cheaper to borrow that money, right? And so that's important because that shows a shift in kind of where we have been. Because, back in January, we were talking markets were looking at 5, 6 rate cuts. We haven't seen any of them, all right, because the macro environment, the U.S. economy, it's been challenged. Okay, we've still seen that inflation sticky, not where the Fed wants it. All right, still seen a pretty strong labor market. So now folks are starting to wrestle with, are there cracks in that labor market? All right, is that unemployment going to tick up? That inflation to continue to slow? So the Fed has made the decision and has not made it as of now. We'll likely see, if you ask me, markets are favoring a 25 basis point cut. So just, one rate cut is a way to think about it, but 25 basis points to start that process of, okay, let's lower these interest rates, okay, so that we make borrowed money cheaper in a sense because it's looking like the economy's ready for it now.
Mm-hmm. And we are recording, just full transparency, because I think when you talk about something that's a specific report, I want transparency on this. You guys know we record ahead. I think it's pretty obvious. We accidentally mess up a few times. I think I priced corn for the August podcast when we recorded in July, and every farmer could have caught me on it because prices went down.
Yes.
But for this one in particular, we're recording on Friday, September 6th. So that report is coming out soon, obviously in a couple weeks. So if Taylor is wrong by chance, that there is a chance every now and then. It's not on him. It is before the report comes out. But no, I think that is incredibly important. And I'm very, Matt knows this, Taylor knows this, I'm very farmer specific. I want to do something. How can I help the guy on the ground, the guy where he's at, what he's doing, and the things that directly affect him that he can somehow find a way to control. Mm-hmm. And what Taylor has done a lot for a lot of us, and a lot of farmers already know this, but it's instead of just telling me the interest rates are going up, the interest rates are going down, tell me what factors are in there and make me understand why I need to care. And I think that's important because me at home doesn't really care about the national unemployment rate right at the beginning of the day.
Right, sure.
But when you get this thing broken down and explain it to me, at least I can start understanding trends and have a game plan to know what's coming. And I think that's important. Even if it's out of our control, sometimes knowing the trend or knowing what could be coming makes life better. It's just like buying insurance in case something that's unexpected happens. Sometimes you need to expect a little bit of a trend coming your way so you can plan accordingly. And I think it's very important. And I applaud Taylor for how he explains that because it is very hard to tell me to care about an unemployment rate that doesn't affect me.
Right.
And in the end, it does. And I think that's very important.
And that's really the matter. And I think you kind of touched on this, Renee, that anytime we get on and we talk about these things, we don't talk about these things as this is going to happen because there's no one out there, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. What the goal of this information is to try in any way to kind of give us that advantage, right, that leg up in the market to where we can understand to a certain extent what risk is out there, All right, not that we know what's going to happen, but what risk is out there so that, for instance, if I'm thinking about buying new equipment, knowing that I may sell that equipment, right, to an extent, I need to understand how the economy is moving, right? Mm-hmm. Not only the farm economy, but the broader economy at large, right? And then for my interest rate, how much am I borrowing? All right, what's my rate, on that loan for my equipment? Okay, and then, when I go to resell that equipment later on, what is that going to look like? These types of things we don't know ultimately, because it's hard enough to even decide, okay, what time do I need to sell my equipment? How does that fit into my marketing plan? How does that fit into my finances when tax time comes? There's so many things. I mean, it's a tangled web, and ultimately trying to do our best to kind of untangle that web and just present the risks that are out there. Okay, not that anyone knows what's going to happen, but the more informed we can be, the better we can parse through data and information, because, you just open up your phone and you could find an opinion or a data point for just about anything. And you could find somebody that's either going to prove you wrong or prove you right on just about any matter. You keep searching, what do they call it? They call it our, your bubble, or your kind of that, like with social media, the algorithms move you into kind of this bubble, right? Mm-hmm. Where everybody kind of confirms your thought, and that's kind of where we want to bring in some of this information, parse through it so that we can be as well informed, and the folks that we interact with can hopefully be as well informed as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Speaking about keeping people well informed, talk to us about where we are. When we recorded with you the first time back in the spring, there was this thought that we were going to have this sweet app and the website was going to be good. And I think we had maybe just launched the website, and the app was not even, had not come to fruition yet when it comes to transitioning that information there. So talk to us about other information to keep up to date. And then also in there is some of this macro information in one of those reports that people can get pushes for. So kind of go over that with us if you don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the within the Kentucky Farm Bureau app, which if you haven't downloaded already, we certainly encourage you to do so. You may already have it on your phone and have used it for things previously. But what we have done essentially in the app is we have partnered with a group called Bar Chart. And so what that they give us pricing for key commodities. So we have what's called futures pricing in the app. So things like corn, soybeans, wheat, cattle, hogs, but also things like crude oil, things like currencies as well, these types of things that could be useful. It's a pricing tool, so we have that within the app. We have long done a grain bids email that as of September 26th, okay, we will move away from the email, okay, and we will move all that grain bid information will be within the app as well, partnering with Bar Chart too. Within the app, unfortunately, for those who are listening, it doesn't, when you pull up your phone and when you open up the zip code, it's not your zip code. So you'll just have to go and you have to put your zip code in, click go, and it'll show all of the whether it's an elevator or processor that they have near you. You can actually just type in your zip code, click go, and it'll pop up within several hundred miles, I believe 250 miles. Don't know the exact number, but any of those facilities that are around you. All right, and you can get those cash bids as well as the basis that are there. And then also to our economic and cattle reports, which I think we talked a little bit about last time, will be out there and on the app, as well as in some of those resources that we have too. It's the data that we discuss within every report we make available. So folks can go and they can go within the app, click on the report when it comes out from the source, whether it's the USDA or whether it's, the Federal Reserve, whoever it may be, right, that's coming out with some of this information or this discussion, right, we've got that information there within the app too. So it's a way to have information that's easily accessible. Just pull up your app and boom, it's there. You can get a push notification to go in the app too, make it easy, as easily accessible as possible. But it's also too, it's a way hopefully that that we can connect with our membership and those that are participating, right? You can, you may agree or disagree. And that's another thing we want to be clear with, We see things from our perspective and we try to be as absolutely as accurate as as possible in everything that we do. But a lot of things we do, at least with my reports, for instance, are my opinion, my interpretation of markets. And why I know there's not going to be folks that just want to call up and argue. But yeah, one of the reasons we do it is, number one, to have that information, but to engage with our membership, right? Just to try to help, maybe this is useful. All right. And if it is, how can we make it even more useful? So there's kind of a two components to it, right? It's an informational piece, but it's also a way just to connect, right? Way for us to actively be out there putting information out to hopefully engage with our membership and those interested. So
excellent. Yeah. New website, apps. You guys are getting out there. I mean, if you need information, it's definitely available.
Yeah, I just want to make it as easy as possible. Want to kind of put it in one place. So, with emails are really great, but sometimes you might get 4 or 5, 6 emails turns into 30, and so it's one of those situations where, yeah, we house everything in the app. You know where to go, you know where to click consistently to find that information that you want, right? It's super easy, super accessible. Few clicks. That's the goal.
Yeah, we'll put some of those links in the show notes so folks can easily access the app if they don't have the app yet, and those kinds of things. We'll have that easy to just click on it and load it up and be ready to go.
Yeah. The only thing, and you may have said it and I might have not caught that part, the only additional piece, and for some of my people, it's been the one to teach them the most. One is to make sure you download it. But once you get that app and enable notifications, you got to go in the settings within the app itself. Right in the right corner, there's a little settings button, and you'll just need to enable which reports you're interested in. And really the reason for that is if you want the public affairs notices, which we hope you do, we hope you want all 3 different reports. But if you're a grains guy with absolutely zero interest in cattle, there's no need for you to get a push notification that the cattle report came out. Or vice versa. Most guys, I'll be honest, as I open the phone, even if they don't have cattle or they don't have grain crops, they go, well, their prices affect me too in the end. I kind of want to be in the know. Most of the time they click all 3 and that's the notifications they get. But it is a little bit different maybe than some apps you've had, but I kind of like it. Gives people a little more choice within it. And we're constantly looking for ideas. If you ever hear anyone on our team out in the field right now, that is probably the number one way we leave every room is this is some cool new stuff we're doing, but we are not done. But we want to go on the trek that our members want us to go in. Yep. And so definitely appreciate the thought on that. I do want to give you one more shot. It's a tough harvest season for some people. Grain prices are tough to look at. For my cattle guys, we're having a little bit of a recovery. So some of those guys are looking at weaning calves and having a good fall. But a lot of people, we've got a lot of diversified farmers in the state. And so when you're talking to guys going into the winter months after a tough harvest, maybe even if you've got a bumper crop and you're looking at the prices you have, what's kind of your advice to a guy as he goes into the winter to plan for next year after what maybe might not have been the most optimistic harvest season? What kind of advice do you give him from your perspective as an economist? Maybe what resources, what kind of mantra to go with? Do you have any advice for a guy out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, one of the things that's really been on the forefront of my mind, and without getting into, from a marketing standpoint or some of the decisions to start thinking about, for us in Kentucky in particular, things like, storage or kind of, on the forefront of our minds, really just to take a step back to, and there's a lot of younger farmers out there in particular too, that it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. To kind of keep in mind the nature of the industry. And I don't mean to get off and, get too philosophical or anything like that, but working in agriculture production is very volatile. It's very competitive. Our folks in Kentucky are not just competing with, folks in the U.S. Mm-hmm. There's folks from all over the world. In particular, you've got countries like Brazil, right? That everyone is aware of now, is a key competitor. It's a very competitive industry. So it's a global industry. And you get seasons like this that are just difficult, right? Where sometimes your own success gets the best of you in the sense that, right, we are so good at producing these products that the price takes a hit, right? At the end of the day, when prices are low in a situation like this, for the demand that's out there, you've just got too much supply, right? To put it simply, we've just done an exceptional job at producing these products, and we have to wrestle with that. But the one thing that I would encourage folks to keep in mind, especially our producers, is your role in American society as an entrepreneur, the role that you play in your communities, the impact that you have, right? It's very difficult, but for farmers, that's nothing new, right? I think for us in our families, as it's been in production's been a part of our lives and what we've seen for generations, that the difficulty, it's there, right? And sometimes it's harder than others, but at the end of the day, just to remember the creativity that's there, right? And making things work, I think, is keeping that in mind. And that comes in the form, especially these days, we've had topics like, diversification is used a lot more than maybe it was 15 years ago, right? Diversifying operations. You've seen, I think, things like agritourism, right? Those are words that we're seeing more and more. I was just running some numbers for Fran, who runs our Certified Farm Market program. They have had some tremendous enrollment numbers recently, right? Folks that it's just creativity. That's what it is. It's creativity and it's entrepreneurship, right? It's an incredible representation of what you see. America's been known to be, right? A lot of entrepreneurs that just figure out how to get it done. It's difficult. It's hard, but we've got, here in the state of Kentucky and our producers, we've got the best in the world to make that happen. So, like I said, not to get too off into the philosophical, to step away from kind of some of the decisions that will need to be made, here to finish out the year as we prep for next year. But just to really keep those things in mind, keep that the role of the agriculture producer, the farmer in American society is so very important. It's core to the American way of life, and just to constantly be looking to improve and think, what do we need to do now, right? What do we need to do to make this work, to keep on with what we've been doing? So, a bit of a long answer and kind of a wrap around to maybe what Renee was, what we were trying to get at, but that's just something that's been on my mind here recently for sure.
Yeah, and I think really good advice was given to me in another group, a group of very diverse ages, and they said, for you young farmers, don't be scared to tell someone about how tough it is and ask for advice. Find kind of a mentor. And for you older ones, try not to say, I've lived through worse. And it's because sometimes that just makes you feel like you're in a farther pit as the young farmer. And that really hit home. I saw a lot of people in the room of both age groups kind of like light up like, oh, that makes sense. Like when I was young, I wouldn't have wanted somebody to just say, nah, you'll be fine. I've been through worse. But you do want to hear, as a young farmer, I've made it. Yeah. So there's kind of a mentorship. So I kind of wanted to pass that advice along. I loved what you said. I think it's very, very important to find creativity and do all those things. But sometimes to get yourself off the island where you feel like you're by yourself in a bad way, sometimes you got to find that person that's willing to say, I made it. It was tough. And you'll make it.
You'll get through it too.
Let's talk it through, and don't end up being that guy on accident that's like, did you live through the 80s? Like, that's just tough. And so it's a matter of both sides kind of converging in the middle and saying, I'll be willing to ask, and you be willing to step back and remember what it was like in my shoes. And I think it's a good conversation to have. So
yeah, and even digging in, like, because you certainly understand maybe the sentiment behind, is so-and-so going to figure out what I'm doing? Because it is a business. That's what the farm, the land that you farm, it's a business, okay? And so, there is kind of, as a small or large business owner, you're always nervous of that competition aspect. Oh, should I share my information? And certainly, absolutely understand that aspect. But the thing about agriculture is you could be in the same county, and what you're raising or what you're growing, your land, even the weather that you see year in and year out, what you're using in terms of, herbicides, or fungicides, or pesticides, whatever, that you're doing, not one farm is not two farms are not going to be the exact same. You're going to have so much variation within a county, within an area. I think that's a wonderful thing. It's so encouraging when you see folks within a county, right, or within an area, or within some region, right, where there is that mentorship that takes place. There's a younger farmer that can benefit from that information that's passed on, and that's what keeps the industry strong, right? it's always innovating, number one, but it's kind of that knowledge that's passed on, and it's folks learning how to do things the right way. And then, hey, how can I make it even better? You know, and that's the piece. Yeah, certainly understand you want to preserve your secrets, especially if you're doing things really, really well. But at the same time, you know, you go from one farm to the next, and they might only be a mile away, but there's going to be so many things that are so different about those operations that, you know, any bit of information that folks can share to help one another, I think is absolutely beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fun Friday. I know we're ahead of time on this one, but we're going to see if Taylor holds true. No, we'll see how that report comes out. Appreciate his insight.
We'll grade you by the end of the month on what you said today. Was he right? Yeah.
Get my report card.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. But thank you for being here. I know it was just a quick jaunt downstairs, but I enjoy it. I know I get to hear him all the time, Matt, but this is a kind of fun thing for you to get to dig in.
I get a little smarter every time you come and talk to me, so I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. No, thank y'all so much. No, I enjoy coming on the podcast for those of you, and I'll give a little pitch for the podcast. Yeah, for those of you who are listening, yeah, share this with folks that you know. Whether it's, you know, hopefully you enjoy listen to it consistently, but yeah, you know, share that with others. I think there's information that's shared here, podcast in and podcast out, that's entertaining, but it's also informational. I think it's good to have, and ultimately, you know, it's a great way for Farm Bureau to connect with the state. And so y'all are doing a great job. Thanks for the time. Appreciate you being on.
Very much, yeah.
Thanks, Taylor. All right, and thank you, listeners. Be sure to subscribe to the larger podcast, Kentucky Farm Life, and we will see you next time on Between the Rows.